10th, 2024 Town Board meeting to order. Ms. Marco, would you call the roll?
Mr. Dawson?
Present.
Mr. Mastriani?
Present.
Mrs. Galucci?
Present.
Mr. Schlag?
Present.
And Mrs. Collins?
Present.
5 present.
Thank you, Ms. Marco. A quorum is present. Would you please join us in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance? And Mr. Mastriani, would you lead us?
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have 3 public hearings tonight, and we also have an executive session. The executive session will be held after liaison reports and miscellaneous. You're welcome to stay at the end, but usually when we come out of executive session, we just adjourn and we're done for the evening. But by all means, if you want to stay, you're welcome to. The other thing that I'd like to remind everybody is that I want, in case someone is new and has not come to any of the board meetings before, if you wish to speak under any of the privilege of the floor or any of the public hearings, there are sign-up sheets right at the entranceway. Please sign. If you do not sign, your name will not be called and you will not be able to speak, okay? And then also just at 3.5 minutes, I will raise my hand, and then at 4 minutes, I will hit the gavel so that you know that your 4 minutes are up, all right? So I appreciate it. Thank you. We'll now open public hearing number 1. Ms. Marco, would you read the public hearing?
Sure. To recognize the introduction of introductory local law blank of 2024, a change of zone request on a plus or minus 1.86 acres from single-family residential R1 and retail business B1 to general business B2 to facilitate the construction of a plus or minus 3,975 square foot Stewart's convenience store with 4 fueling islands. Property is located at High Bridge Road, Mercer Avenue, and Sherman Street, and comprises 5 parcels of property known as tax map number 59.16-2-10, 59.16-2-9.2, 59.16-2-9.1, 59.16-2-40.2, and 59.16-2-40.1.
Ms. Marco, is there anyone who wishes to speak?
I just have to look at my little log, I'm sorry.
No, that's all right, I asked you to wait.
Just want to make sure. That's okay.
Mark Ecker?
Mark Ecker, I live at 1157 High Bridge Road. Can you hear me?
Yeah?
You just have to come up to the microphone.
Oh, okay. I'm Mark Ecker, I live at 1157 High Bridge Road since 1969. Which makes it longer than some of our finest have been here. But I would like to say that I'm concerned about this business coming in here mostly because of the traffic that we now have on High Bridge Road, especially prior to when the bridge was closed. I think we got to be very careful. We've got sidewalks that accommodate handicapped people. Wheelchairs are acceptable. And coming off the 890 or coming down the hill, I think it's a very dangerous situation. I think that we should, at the very least, find a way to slow the traffic, whether it be by flashing light or something of that effect. There has been a fatality on High Bridge Road. Approximately 4 to 5 years ago, a POW was pulling out of 1166 High Bridge, and he got trapped in a car. took Rotterdam an hour to get him out of the car. He died in Albany Med 2 or 3 days later. He was POW right away. I wanted to bring that up to you when you think about voting on this, the safety of the people, walking, wheelchairs, etc. We need something to slow the traffic down or control it a little bit more if we accept this. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Chuck Marshall?
Good evening, I'm Chuck Marshall from Stewart's. We were here last February 28th, and between then and now resubmitted a bunch of material. So at the conclusion of the public hearing, or whenever you find appropriate, if you have any questions, myself and Mark Nadolny from Creighton Manning Engineering, who did the traffic study, are here to answer any of the board's questions. So that's it. I'll just sit down.
Thank you.
Thomas Morgan?
Sure.
Good evening. I didn't expect this. They were going to talk about traffic. So Stewart submitted a 100-page traffic analysis, which was mind-bending, but I read it. It's mostly concentrated up by the project site. But I got to say this, that the property that's across the road, 2.5 acre property that a developer came, wanted to put apartments on, they tried 4 times. But anyway, on the second attempt for the planning commission meeting, one of the commissioners, one of the planning board members, took the time to go over to High Bridge a couple of times and drive down High Bridge, drive through the back roads, try to get on and off High Bridge. When that meeting finally came, one of the first things he said when it was his turn to talk is that neighborhood has a traffic problem. And nothing is ever done. The traffic just keeps coming and coming and coming. Now, I looked at the DOT reports. As you can see at the bottom of that thing I just passed out, that traffic graph, yeah, there's a morning peak and an afternoon peak, but you can see on that graph for the May 23rd test that there's a constant flow of traffic all day long until midnight when everybody goes to bed. Now, if you look at the map, I'm going to take that 110 pages or 100 and however many pages and give you a visual. The light blue line shows that High Bridge is an enclosed community. We only have 3 ways out: north and south of Kings Road or over 890. All those little black dots that you see along High Bridge Road are all our exit points. Now keep in mind that we have 768 residences in that neighborhood. 66 of them are apartments, and then the rest is commercial property. So that's how we exit. We exit on High Bridge Road. The vast majority of people, hardly anybody goes down to Kings Road to exit. All right, so we are enclosed. So that is our problem, is that everybody cuts through Woodlawn, everybody cuts up Kings Road, all to get on 890 because they don't want to go to that intersection where Home Depot is to get down and get on 890. So they cut on, they cut down through Woodlawn coming from Albany, and they cut over. And if you look at the traffic maps from DOT, you can see the numbers bear that out. The numbers on Kings Road, the numbers on Campbell Road. We have more traffic, not much, but we have more traffic than Hamburg Street. Hamburg Street's a commercial road, okay? And nobody's ever taken a look at this to see why what can be done. I don't know if anything can be done. Now, Stewart's claims, they say they're not a destination. What? Okay. They say they're not a destination, but everybody I talk to says, well, you know, I go there for bread, milk, eggs, you know, whatever. Yeah, it might be a drive-by place, but tell all those people just to the right of the High Bridge neighborhood, look to the right, you'll see a big cluster of apartments. There's 400 apartment units there, plus you have all the woodlawn to the right. Tell all those people that it's not a destination. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Darlene Borr.
Good evening. Thank you, all of you, for what you do for our town. And I really don't have to speak on this issue, but I do have a question. I would like to know what exactly is going to happen with Stewart's with their sewage issue. How is that going to be handled? If someone could tell me how I could find that out, I would appreciate it. Because that is something that's going to affect that whole territory once they go in there.
We'll have Chuck address that question when he comes back.
That's it for people that signed up. I'm going to read the ones that were sent to me.
Okay.
Ms. Marco, I am opposed to a Stewart's at this location on High Bridge Road. I believe the high traffic during certain times of the day will make for serious safety concerns if this business is allowed to be constructed at the location in question. As it is now, turning left from Peter Road can be a challenge during heavy traffic times. And the fact that now drivers will have to be aware of other drivers wanting to turn into this location and other drivers exiting that location will only add to safety concerns. I am also concerned about the drainage issue on High Bridge Road has ongoing flooding issues the town is well aware of and having problems resolving. Now add the runoff of this new location after being paved may only aggravate the flooding problems. Thank you for your time. Mike Whitehouse, High Bridge Manor resident. Diane, with regards to the Stewart's High Bridge Road public hearing tonight, please read the following in the record tonight. Please reply that you received and I did. Victor Murdoch of Eugene Drive. With regards to the proposed zoning change requested by Stewart's to construct and operate a new convenience store gas station on High Bridge Road, I am writing this comment in opposition to the proposed zoning change. The town board approved the new comprehensive plan in 2022, but did not follow up and update the town's zoning laws. So as has been the case for years, the Rotterdam Town Board spends unnecessary time and energy focused on zoning changes instead of focusing on long-term economic development and growth. I am not against developing the site. My issue is that there is already 5 convenience stores, gas stations within a mile of the proposed site. By Stewart's admission at the last hearing, they do not anticipate any additional foot traffic other than what already occurs in the area. As such, the new store will only be cannibalizing business from the other convenience stores, gas stations in the area. The site in question is a bit of an eyesore. That said, instead of settling for another redundant retail outlet that is already saturating the area, we should be looking to find, recruit, and utilize state, county, town resources to attract a business that will enhance and diversify the economic environment in Rotterdam. The town of Rotterdam has no legal obligation whatsoever to change any zoning to accommodate Stewart's. Stewart's estimates that it will produce $600,000 of annual economic activity. I would suspect, given the cannibalization of the other convenience stores, gas stations located nearby, Stewart's estimated economic impact and generous as at best. Also, given the prime location of the site off of 890, I would suspect that with a coordinated effort, the town could look to market the site to businesses that would produce an economic impact far greater than what Stewart's has to offer. The properties in question are not zoned for what Stewart's wants to build there. There are other lots in Rotterdam that are zoned B2. Stewart's should look to locate to those sites. More importantly, I feel the town should start the process of updating its zoning code with an open and transparent process. This process would include establishing a zoning committee that will hold monthly community workshops throughout the town to seek and incorporate the opinions of residents and business owners into the process. The mission of this process should be to establish a zoning code throughout the entire town, and that will create certainty for businesses and residents, enhance Rotterdam's ability to create a diversified economic base, optimize growth potential and recognize the importance of maintaining the town's a nice place to live. This process should not be open-ended. Perhaps look to schedule all public workshops and hearings to run through the end of 2024 with the goal of updating the town's zoning code early in 2025. Lastly, there is a current board member who has experienced the disappointment and stinging pain that the town's current zoning process can befall a resident. With regards to the Whispering Pines Senior Community Zoning Change battle under the Thomas Zone administration several years ago, this current board member fought valiantly to save the character of his neighborhood. He expended uncountable time, energy, and resources to fight the massive project, only to have his efforts when he learned that the deciding board member who initially voted against the project got muscled by the developer and changed his vote to support the project. I hope that disappointment is still in his heart as this zoning process moves forward and he can convince the rest of the board to hold off on this and any additional zone change requests that may rise. I hope he will remember that pain and rally the board to move forward to update the town's entire zoning code so no other resident of Rotterdam has to feel that heartbreak. I would be happy to assist the board in any capacity to see this town move forward with updating its zoning code. Until then, as the comprehensive plan states clearly, the town should continue to enforce its land use laws. All the best, Victor Murdoch.
Are there any other?
One more. Dear Mrs. Markle, my name is Karen Laverty. I have currently lived in the High Bridge area off Peter Road for the past 32 years. I really like my neighbors, my street, and more importantly, my home. I know I am only one person voicing my opinion, but if my husband and I didn't like this area so much, I would not have raised my two children who are now adults men, who might I say also reside in Rotterdam. I am very concerned about the possibility of a Stewart shop being built where the old Highbridge Mobile used to be. I have a few issues about this proposal. Traffic volume, I believe it will increase significantly. Traffic flow, I believe it will become increasingly more difficult to get out of Peter Road onto Highbridge Road. Safety of trying to cross the street. I walk a lot and I also walk my dog quite frequently down Sherman Road, and in those neighborhoods I sometimes have to wait a minute or so to cross the street safely. I feel if Stewart's shop occupies this lot, it will be very dangerous for those of us that enjoy a nice walk around our neighborhood. I know that a light is not possible, as this was brought up at the meeting when the Spectrum building was being built years ago. They said they couldn't put a light at Highbridge Road and Peter Road because it would have been too close to the I-90 light. I understand why they said that, but if Stewart's comes in, there is no way traffic will not increase. We currently have enough businesses in our residential area, let alone we already have a convenience store. We do not need another one. The merchandise that Stewart's would sell is the same that currently residing Cumberland Farms on Highbridge Road. Sells, therefore, Stewart's is not needed. I realize that the lot is an eyesore, and I understand why the town would like to do something with it. I feel that even just planting some grass, trees, or a bench would give it more curb appeal. It doesn't do be something extravagant or costly, simply can be very pretty too. Maybe we could put some type of plaque on the space. Also, just a suggestion. Thank you for reading my email. I appreciate your time. Sincerely, Karen Laverty. And that's it.
Mr. Marshall, do you mind coming up to address the board? Thank you.
The only question that I saw or heard from the public was regarding the septic or the sewage. So as we indicated, what we would do is along Sherman, we would install the septic system with an area that's to be conserved for anything for the septic system and potential stormwater, and then have no other development to the north of that line. But there's no sewage and no municipal sewer accessible, so it would have to be a septic system.
So follow up on the septic system again, just knowing other Stewart's 2 bathrooms.
Correct.
Okay, and then when you got a prep area, sinks, stuff for sandwiches if you're making them, or not?
We don't make a lot of food on site. It's mostly prep food that comes in from Saratoga. So it would be probably a grease trap for protection, but ultimately there's no on-site food preparation.
Okay.
No vents, no fryers.
So basically the 2 bathrooms.
Correct.
Chuck, could you just speak a minute about the adjustments that you've made in the site plan since the initial?
Sure. So since the initial submission, I did 2 of the neighbors, well, 3 of the neighbors, 2 of which are present here tonight, did meet with me afterwards, as you guys had asked. On about March 12th, I did a site visit with them. What we think is most appropriate is we eliminated, we eliminated the 1 gas pump furthest to the east and prevented that line of sight from their house. So if you remember, there was 4 when we started, and what we did was we eliminated the 1 that was in the proximity here because we met with Tim and Elizabeth, and this will block, the building will act as a shield to the canopy from their house. Additionally, we can remove all the lighting on the back of the building, so that it's just switch actuated lighting and not on a photo cell or timer. And then we discussed with them fencing and landscaping along the property. What we discussed, and the drawing doesn't reflect that, they have about a 2-foot hill that the store would sit below. So we're gonna use the hill to a little bit of an advantage. We're gonna slide the fence closer to Highbridge, and they'll have some room between the fence and the hill, and potentially do additional more plantings. And then the other neighbor we met with was Joanne, who lives at either 101 or 111, and she just wanted a fence and some tree clearing.
I just remember seeing some different orientations of the building. I don't know if that was, if this orientation is the best on the feedback that you've gotten.
I mean, based off what we discussed, that's where we landed, using the building to kind of screen. The alternative would be moving the building like closer to Mercer. But again, that's I think a site plan and a planning board element, not a, not a zoning change. And I think that's also indicative of anything that were to go there. So not the zone change aside, if anything went there, you would, do the same thing today. Stewart's could go there today without gas. That's obviously not in our business model. But if we went there, we would work with them the same way, today as we did in other instances.
Again, traffic. Traffic's the issue.
Mark,
Talk to us about traffic.
Mark Nadolny, I'm gonna sit down.
Thank you. So we got the lay version of traffic here, and
Sure.
my recommendation again is to keep it layperson, not to get into too much of the technical details, but, provide the information.
Understood. Yep. My name is Mark Nadolny. I work for Creighton Manning Engineering, and we did conduct the traffic assessment for the project. Before we finalized the scope, we did send that to the town planner and the TDE, and they actually added an intersection and some additional things that they wanted us to look at. So we feel that we did address the comments that, from the town, and this study has been presented to the town, and we're waiting for formal comments. So we feel like, they asked us for additional things, we provided that, so we do have to wait to get their formal comments, but we do feel that we addressed the items up front. We did look at 5 intersections. The intersection, both interchange ramp intersections, Sherman, Peter, and Mercer on High Bridge. So those are the 5 we looked at. We looked at those intersections during the worst case peak hours, which would be the morning and the afternoon commute, which is also the peak time for the Stewarts as well. So generally what traffic study is, we look at the worst case time periods for the proposed development and for your adjacent street, and you look at those worst case times. So that's what we focused on. We do recognize that Kings Road was closed to the north for that bridge replacement. So we did use some historical traffic counts that were done on High Bridge in order to bump our traffic volumes up to those historical levels. So that your TDE will review that and make sure that we did that correctly. And we did use a program that is actually looks at anonymous cell phone data to see where traffic is coming to and from Kings Road to the north, so we have an idea of where that traffic distributes down through the neighborhoods. So it's not just a guess on where the traffic is coming from. We do use available data to sort of reassign that traffic through the neighborhoods. So that's something we did. We also included a crash assessment, which focuses on the last 3 years of available crash data at all the intersections and the segments in the vicinity of the Stewart, so that's included in the study. We did the sight distance assessment at each of the driveways to make sure that there's adequate sight lines looking left and right, and also stopping sight distance to make sure that there's no issues. We are recommending keeping sight lines clear along the frontage, make sure that the plantings and the signage are not in those sight lines. And then we did something called a trip generation assessment, which is essentially looking at how much traffic we would anticipate the site to generate over the course of those peak times, those peak hours. And again, we look at that morning and the afternoon. And based on that assessment, we also recognize that the business model for Stewart's is to pull traffic from the existing traffic. So it's not all new traffic coming to the site, as people have noted. We're looking at over half the traffic coming to and from the Stewart's is existing traffic that's already on the highway. So you're not generating all new traffic to the site. But in terms of new traffic to the site, we would anticipate approximately 65 to 85 new trips in the morning and in the afternoon. So those are new trips to the area. Those are coming from east and west and north and south. So it's not all from one direction. So you're sort of, doing it from different directions. So it's not all in one movement. Those volumes are then added to the existing intersections to determine what sort of impact they have over existing conditions. And that's what the assessment is based on. And the evaluations does get into the increases in delay that your typical user will experience at those intersections. And the long and the short of it is the delay at some of the intersections and max will increase about 7 to 12 seconds, worst case. But in general, it's in the order of 2 to 3 seconds. So like I said, worst case 7 to 12, approximately during those AM and PM peaks. But they don't necessarily rise to the level of needing off-site mitigation related to the Stewart's. We also did a queuing summary that essentially how much traffic will stacks back from the traffic signal adjacent to the Stewart's to make sure that Sherman and the driveways wouldn't be blocked, and they would not be blocked based on that assessment. So that's as layman's as I can try to get in terms of what we looked at. Again, it was submitted to the town, and now we're waiting for those formal comments from the TDE and from the town itself.
So the question again, I think the public brings this up, is based on their observations and experience in that corridor. They believe they have a traffic issue, too much traffic. Could you just give us, your professional opinion relative to that road and its capacity, and how that relates to what we're trying to do here with these additional trips, and can the road accommodate it?
Yes. So Highbridge Road is actually classified as a major collector road. It's a road that is just designed to get traffic from neighborhoods and from other minor roads to the interstate. So that's the way it's been built, and that's the way it's classified within the functional class system. So a road like that, you've got capacity of in the order of 1,000 vehicles in each direction of what a single lane road can accommodate. Traffic right now on Highbridge Road is approximately 400 to 500 vehicles in each direction. So you're at about half of the capacity of what a road could handle. Maybe, granted, 1,000 vehicles in each direction would be really busy, but it's not like you were near the threshold of capacity on Highbridge Road. And like I said, we're not anticipating a lot of new traffic. It's 65 to 85 new trips. It's a lot of pass-by trips, so you're talking about just turns off of Highbridge where someone may be going home from work and they stop to get gas on the way home from work or to work. So the trip was already existing. They may have been going to the interchange anyways. It's just they make that turn in and out of the driveway. So in terms of capacity, the roadway itself has adequate capacity, and the intersection analysis did not show any failing movements. yes, is going to be an increase in delay, but it's not a failing operation where we would say, okay, yes, you need to, install a traffic signal to mitigate that. And as someone suggested that you've got other businesses out there like the Spectrum, and you've got a Cumberland Farms and I think an ice cream shop down the street, and those types of businesses deal with similar levels of traffic, and those are not failing intersections out there, coming in and out of those other businesses. So that gives us a level of comfort to say that, well, a similar business is not going to have anything different than what is already out there.
Could you speak on making a left-hand turn on a Pier Road onto High Bridge, like you're gonna go back to 890? And, the impacts of your 2 to 3 seconds and 7 to 12, and just my observations in spending some time out there and watching traffic. The concern would be from the public again, that's a tough turn there, and how this timing impacts that left-hand turn.
Yes, so that left-hand turn off of Peter Road is the place where you would see the biggest increase in delay. So on average, it's estimated that it's approximately 20 seconds to make that left turn off of Peter Road. That's on average, so I think there was about 70 vehicles doing this, so that's about 1 a minute, just to give you a frame of reference. So every minute, you're waiting about 20 seconds to make that left turn. Sometimes you may wait 5 seconds, sometimes you may wait 35 seconds, but on average, it's 20 seconds. So that's the left turn movement that increases by 7 to 12 seconds. So that would be where you'd see the most quote-unquote pain from a traffic capacity and delay standpoint. But it does not raise to the level of a failing movement where we would look and say, yes, that needs a traffic signal. There is going to be an increase in delay, no doubt. I'm not trying to say there isn't, but it doesn't rise to the level of needing separate turn lanes on Peter Road. I mean, the majority, almost 95% of the people on Peter Road are making a left turn. Very few people make the right turn, so you wouldn't need to really have separate left and right turn lanes, because the right turn lane would really have no impact on the delay.
Is there any correlating traffic collision data relative to that left-hand turn that you're aware of?
So we did do the crash assessment, and at Peter Road, there was one crash in the last 3 years, and it was a rear-end collision. Someone stopped on High Bridge to let an animal pass in front of them, and the person behind them wasn't paying attention. So there is not a existing right angle crash pattern that was exposed in the last 3 years. I'm sure there's been a left turn crash over the last 10, but it wouldn't rise to the level of saying, yes, there's a pattern, there's 10 right angle accidents, we've got an issue here. I mean, I've been doing this for 23 years, and they're pretty evident when you see an issue that, oh yes, there's a sight distance problem here because there's the same type of crash occurring at an intersection repeatedly. We didn't see that at Peter Road and High Bridge.
Thank you.
Although Mark's the expert on traffic, I did want to, the Peter Road is the only instance where the level of service changes. And again, it doesn't hit the capacity, it doesn't change to a level where it's warranted for mitigation or something like that. But one of the things to consider, and again, proposed Stewart's driveway on High Bridge, is lined up with Peter Road. And one of the things that could affect the level of service would be is if you alter the access configuration and don't make that a full access, directly across from Peter Road. So again, that's that next level of planning board stuff. But that could be one of the mitigating factors that we could work through.
And I noticed that driveway access there. Do you guys anticipate at some point there being a need for traffic light there?
A signal at Peter Road?
Yeah.
I would not anticipate a signal being warranted. So essentially, in order to get a traffic signal, you generally need to meet a signal warrant, I'm sorry, and there's, I think, 9 of them. And 4 of them are very specific related to volumes. There's a peak hour warrant, there's a 4-hour warrant, an 8-hour warrant. So you specifically have to meet certain thresholds, and I don't think that Peter Road would meet those thresholds to warrant a traffic signal. And like someone from the audience had said, it is pretty close to an interchange, so you generally don't want to have a traffic signal that close to an interchange, where you've got them so close if it's not warranted. There are other warrants in terms of if you're near a school or a train track or a pedestrian warrant. is met, but a pedestrian warrant, you would need 70 pedestrians at an intersection, and you'd see that near a school or something like that. So that wouldn't rise to the level of needing a signal warrant at this location. I don't believe the signal, the volumes out there would warrant a traffic signal based on just standard traffic engineering.
Was there a reason in the design that we're looking at now that the driveway is across from Peter Road? Does that make access possible on Peter, being able to go right across High Bridge into Stewart's? Is that part of your conscious design, or just kind of landed that way?
It is a conscious design. So you generally want to line up driveways. When you have them offset, you run into issues, especially when there's a negative offset where the left turns are sort of coming in across each other. So you wouldn't want to put the driveway further to the east on High Bridge because you'd have left turns sort of competing for the same space. But there's an existing curb cut there now from what the vacant property had. So it's not like this is a new curb cut. But generally, like when we work with DOT, if we had put the driveway on the site plan 50 feet to the west, they would have said no. Put it across from Peter Road. It just sort of cleans up the conflict points rather than having that many turns that you have to sort of worry about making left out, and you're going to worry about someone on the opposite side of the street. It's a little easier when you're across from each other. But like Chuck said, there are things where you can restrict movements in and out and try to force it to maybe the side streets, but then you're forcing traffic to side streets. And so you want to try to keep your main line moves, or the majority of your moves onto the main line, which is the major collector.
And the other alternative, and one of the things that was mentioned was traffic, the potential for traffic calming, and we could look at sidewalks and pedestrian crossing or something like that to see if there's a way to slow the cars down.
Yeah, I know there's an existing crosswalk at Mercer, and it has high reflective signs that seem pretty new. So I don't know if they've been installed recently, but they do seem like they are appropriately placed at the drive or at the crosswalk, pointing down and in advance to alert drivers.
Was that running parallel to High Bridge as
Excuse me?
opposed to perpendicular? Was that running parallel?
There's a crosswalk that crosses High Bridge right at Mercer.
So that's the perpendicular.
Yes, and there's high-vis signs with down arrows and advanced warning signs, and that's the typical treatment you would have for a crossing like that. And there are higher levels of crossings that you can get to, but that is that's what's out there now, and it seems appropriate for what's there now. And I know that I believe the sidewalk stops in Mercer, and I believe the sidewalk is going to be extended across the Stewart's property, so that would provide, allow that pedestrian to continue across Mercer to get to the Stewart's if need be.
Thank you.
Chuck, I had a question for you. One of the residents had an issue with the garbage dumpster, and I see it's moved somewhat in with the new design. Is there an option to move it to the other side of the property? And if so, why not? If not, why is that the case?
Yeah, when I met with Tim and Elizabeth, the thing that I discussed with them was the potential for flipping the store or just moving the dumpster, and that has a couple of internal problems that I haven't been able to work through yet. I can't just move the dumpster to the other side because the delivery door is on their side. So if I get there, I'll try and work through that further, but we did move it away from them, which I think is at least a component, and then wrap the fence on Mercer, which I think provides some additional screening. I have said this to them before, I'll try and do all I can to flip it. We did move the store slightly south. Originally, I think it was 10 feet, we moved it to 15 feet. So we're inching our way towards something, but not, can't hit the home run right away. The dumpster would be more appropriate on Sherman because the apartment complex across the street has a larger scale commercial type dumpster that would effectively match. But we haven't been able to figure out how to do that yet. There's some trade-offs that come with it. I mean, the delivery is once a day, once every 3 days type thing. The dumpsters, twice a week. Putting the parking along Mercer would probably be slightly more active. So it's a trade-off situation that we'll evaluate, but work through.
Oh, could you explain, you said that there was a little bit of a hill on
Yeah,
the
the
property?
fence doesn't, we're gonna, I think, do some plantings on their side, and, because they have a row of plantings that start at the back of their house, and then we'll move the fence forward to give some room for those to grow. But we're gonna offset the property line at 8 to 10, was 10 feet.
Did these property owners indicate with those changes that they're comfortable with this project? Or did they like, hey, that was great that you did that, we're still opposed? What was kind of the feedback?
I mean, Tim and I exchanged pleasantries. I don't think that they're outwardly endorsing, the overall project. I do think that they acknowledge we're, trying. But I think a large component of it would be, and to Mr. Mastriani's point, anything that goes there is going to have some of these similar, concerns. What we're just trying to say is, based on our business model, we can't go there without gas, and that's what the request is for. So I think a lot of the elements would be similar if any type of site plan came forward. We're just saying that we won't do it without gas.
And from the town standpoint, the development of this project, again, it's the gas that you guys have expertise in, which allows you to clean up that site. You should have that kind of expertise.
Yeah, I mean, we submitted a letter from our geologist. The gas dates back to 1972, I think was the initial installation. There's 11 separate tank reports associated with the property dating back to that period. They do have a spill history that dates back to the mid-1980s, which is kind of when DEC brought their spill regulations into effect. Our geologist is concerned, and that was expressed in the letter. And one of the things I think, when we looked, the comments in February were that this doesn't adhere to the comprehensive plan. I did go back, I read, I'm not gonna lie, I used Control F and read where Hybrid Road was. I did not read the entire plan in its entirety, word for word. But Hybrid Road actually does not appear in the comprehensive plan at all. It appears 17 times in the appendices. 15 of those are map references. And then there's 3 individual references to what Hybrid Road should be, and that's provided in my cover letter to you. But one of them is that Hybrid Road should remain residential, and I do think that with the acknowledgement of contamination, these properties would never be redeveloped residential. So I do think that that's one of the areas where we do have some expertise, and again, this is B1 to B2. This is not, I know there's a small portion of residential that's like a nook in the back, but this is not a residential to commercial application.
Again, we're saying it's not an R1 to a B2.
Correct. I mean, and the existing R1 we might be able to save, but I think with the deeded conservation area, we'll probably achieve the same means.
Any questions?
I do. My name's not on there, but can I briefly speak?
I'm sorry, no. We made the ruling at the beginning that if you wanted to speak, you have to stand up.
Well, I just wanted to expand on his answers to people's questions, since I'm the one that,
I know you're the.
yeah, but I have
that
personal
you were
knowledge
talking
of the
to,
DEC
so I
and
understand.
There's a public comment period coming up, you can speak at.
I'm the privilege of the floor, if you signed up.
Thank you for the information.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mrs. Galucci. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlag?
Yes.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes to close the public hearing.
Motion passed. Motion passed. Our next public hearing, the clerk will read.
For the enactment of introductory local law blank of 2024 to establish a 6-month extension to local law 8 of 2023, which established a 6-month moratorium prohibiting battery energy storage system installations within the town of Rotterdam.
Ms. Marco, is there anyone who wishes to speak?
Andrea Capola?
Hi, Andrea Capola, 625 River Road. I know that these kind of facilities sometimes catch fire. My husband's a fireman, a volunteer fireman, and he says he's on the Senior Citizens Brigade. During the day, there's the gentlemen that, or the people that are available are non-working people, which are older, and when things like this catch fire, you've got people that are a little older tending to them, and they don't go out. You can't put these fires out. They burn until they're done. So the gentlemen that are the people, excuse me, I keep referring to them as gentlemen, but it could be ladies too, that our volunteers, our first responders, will be watching and waiting for the fire to go out. And towards the end of the day, when other people get off of work, then they're relieved, or they're joined by younger people that can keep an eye out to watch and make sure that nothing else catches on fire. So that there's concern with where these facilities are placed. And of course, you gotta remember too, that even though the firemen will show up and do their best, there is no training for any of this. There is none. Am I it for two? Do you want me to go on for 3?
You gotta close that one first.
Okay.
Or they have to.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it?
Then I'll entertain a motion to close public hearing number 2.
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Mastriani, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlott?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes, 2.
Motion passes. Next is public hearing number 3, the clerk will read.
For the enactment of introductory local law number blank of 2024 to establish a 6-month extension to local law 9 of 2023, which established a 6-month moratorium prohibiting wind generation system installations within the town of Rotterdam.
Is there anyone who wishes to speak?
Andrea Capola.
Hello again, Andrea Capola, 625 River Road. I'm also here to speak about public hearing number 3. If I had my say, you'd have a extension for 60 years. Technology, as I've explained before, changes every second. The wind and the batteries and stuff, they're going to be changing in about a minute. The wind is detrimental to migratory birds, and we've found out it's not good for people. So I support both moratoriums, and please pass it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it.
I'll entertain a motion to either keep open or close the public hearing on public hearing number 3.
I'll make the motion.
Okay, I'm going to say that Mr. Mastriani made the motion, Mr. Slav seconded it. And clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani? Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlott?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Motion passes. Hearing closed. We'll now go on to privilege of the floor. I want to remind everybody again, you have 4 minutes. At 3.5 minutes, my hand will go off. At 4, the gavel will come down, and it's for anyone who has signed up. So, Ms. Marco, is there anyone who signed up for privilege of the floor?
Mike Zabiri?
Good evening. My
Mike Superior, 21-year property owner, Schenectady County, grew up in Rotterdam. Still care about my town, love my town. Just a couple things. The first thing I have, I just wanted to thank Mrs. Collins, Town Board, City Clerk, Mrs. Marco. Many other residents, we all like to thank you for your integrity and your professionalism in a job that cannot be easy to do. You take a lot of criticism for what you do. You take a lot of things that I've heard not being at this meeting that I don't think it's appropriate to how people approach you. I want you to know we appreciate what you do, and you should be respected for what you do, every one of you, and we thank you for that. The other thing I wanted to bring up, and it's very important to me, probably one of the most important things that I deal with. 2 years ago, on December 22nd of 2022, I had the honor of presenting 2 police plaques, one to the Schenectady Police Department and one to the Rotterdam Police Department. I wanted to come back and tell you how much that these officers mean to me and to so many people that I know. How much that you guys put your lives on the line every day. When you go out that door, you leave your families. You don't know if you're coming home. But you're always going out there and you're protecting us. And it's time that this public and this state protected you. March 25th of 2024, Officer Jonathan Diller of Brooklyn, New York, was tragically killed. Also a resident of Long Island. That really touched us. That really, really broke our hearts. Stephanie, his wife, the eulogy that she said with the young child just really got to us. A felon that was on with 21 arrests that should have never been on the streets is what these guys put up with every day. It's time to change this bail reform. It's time to protect these guys for what they do. And hopefully the state will do something, because I want you to know from me how much you mean to me and people that I know, my family, and I've had officers on the police department, friends in the Schenectady and Rotterdam Police Department. We want to know what you mean to us and how you go out every day and you protect us, because if it wasn't for you, I don't know what would happen. And I wanted to say that from the bottom of my heart. May God watch you every day, protect you, protect your families. And I just want to say one thing, also a shout out to the firemen. God bless you always too for what you do. You risk your life every day too, whether you're volunteer, whether you're full-time. Thank you, and God bless you all. May God watch you always. Thank you.
John Nussback.
John Nussback, Bernice Street, Chief of Carmen Fire Department. I was here the last meeting, spoke about Super 8, and I think it's important to kind of give an update of some of the stuff going on, some stuff that actually just happened a few hours ago, good things that happened. And after the last meeting, so that everyone's aware, the officers of Carmen Fire Department, myself, the chiefs and the officers met with Molly and Terry to go over some of our concerns with Super 8. I appreciate your time that you took with us, because we were there for a few hours, a couple hours at least. And since that time, we've had a lot of good things come out of that. I've been talking with Molly almost every day, for the most part. They've gone forward with talking with .go and other agencies to try and make things safe. Today, around 3:30, 4 o'clock, I actually got a call from .go, and they are currently in the process of taking our suggestions, and they plan to meet with the residents, do fire safety training with them, education with them. They're planning on running fire drills as well, in which they're going to get us involved in. So I want to thank you guys for that, the time you met with us. Joe and Ron, from the very beginning, you guys have supported us and helped push this issue, and I know that it's been kind of a bone of contention amongst everybody, and I appreciate the support and help that we got, because sometimes doing the right thing is not always the easiest thing. So I greatly appreciate the support we got from you and Gerard Liza Collins with pushing this with them, because this is a big, good move in the right direction. And I expressed this to .go. this should really be a model, and Rotterdam should be very proud of how they're moving forward with this, because there's many facilities throughout the state that they have the immigrants living in, and to do this model of teaching them the right thing, keeping them safe, which is part of our job, part of the job of the elected officials, is an important thing. So I urge the public to talk to your state representatives and the board to talk to the state representatives, because this is an issue that really should get pushed, and the governor should really look at what Rotterdam's doing and take that as a model to push that forward on all these other residents. So I appreciate what you've done for us and the support that we got over this from this last meeting. And again, going on, if you guys didn't help us push this forward, I'm not sure we'd be, so I appreciate that. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Andrea Capone.
Hi, remember me? Andrea Capola, 625 River Road. I was here last month with Mary Berry, and we presented the Conservation Advisory Council 2023 report. We didn't properly thank Morgan Cryer for writing the grant for the Great Flats Nature Trail. This is a grant that this town has received, so we can make updates, improvements for the Great Flats Nature Trail. We're not allowed to use cinder blocks. We're not allowed to use, I'm not too sure if we're not allowed to use pressure treated wood. Everything that goes in there has to remain natural or non-degrading or not polluting. So, and then you have to worry about, since you're going to be upgrading a little bit, we have to make sure that it's handicap accessible. So we really appreciate Morgan Cryer, again, who did 99 and 400% work on this grant. We contributed the best we could, but she wrote the grant, and we did not thank her properly. Also, I'd like to remind the community that the Parks Committee is going to have a canal clean sweep at Kiwanis Boat Launch on April 20th from 9 to 12. It's a Saturday. We have it, they do it every year. It's part of Earth Day. Earth Day is always the 22nd of April, but you got to do it on the weekend when people can show up. Also, I'd like to mention that the Rotterdam Junction Volunteer Fire Department is having an open house on Saturday, April 13th. I believe there will be pizza, and the younger people of the community can get a fire hat, and I think they can get into the trucks. Also, I'd like to say this room came out great. Did a wonderful job. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Kevin Callan.
Kevin Khaled, 1014 Paul Avenue, Rotterdam. Sounds like there's been some movement on this Super 8 thing, which is what I want to talk about. I want to know if this board can rally a rigorous and effective response to an egregious and intentionally promulgated crisis by rogue agents in the United States federal regime. 266 days, that's close to 73% of a full calendar year. 266. That's how long Rotterdam has had illegal, virtually unvetted, non-American human souls squatting in our community, using the fruit of the labor born of our sweat equity without any prior discussion, local consent, permission, or any opportunity for a vote from legal residents. That's no small insult, but a gross disregard that violates social contracts, in addition to obvious legal ones. The very presence of 200 plus illegal human souls in our community is a violation of a minimum of 3 federal laws. They conspired to enter our country, they entered our country, they stayed in our country illegally. Let me be clear, they did so knowingly, period. We can discuss the shades of gray of these violations to our heart's content after the teeth of the rule of law has effectively been applied. This evening, I am imploring that you apply an immediate, swift, and effective legal remedy to the presence of the significant violation of law that is the Super 8 situation. Courtney Heimel, when will you bring a strong legal instrument to bear for 266 days worth of violation of law by owner-operator of the Super 8, Sam Chang. Will those fines be aggregate in their effect retroactively to July 19, 2023? When will Sam Chang be charged with aiding and abetting illegal aliens, a violation of the law? When will Sam Chang be charged with encouraging and facilitating perhaps human trafficking? When did a citizen's ignorance of law exempt them from the prosecution of that offense? Is this board going to support a developing two-tier system of justice by not bringing the penalty phase of our law in a timely manner? Courtney, I question if it is reasonable for me to assume you are competent in your capacity as Rotterdam legal counsel. Are you competent? At a minimum, I expect that Mr. Chang be fined for each of the 266 days that has been taking revenue from DocGo, while at the same time disrespecting the people of the town of Rotterdam and the rule of law primarily. In my opinion, he is complicit in the use of children as human political pawns. That is an evil and a disgraceful political chess maneuver, which I interpret as an act of aggression and an uncivilized act that is warlike in its nature. Loosely interpreted, Sam Chang is willingly complicit in something that smells like human trafficking to me. He is profiting hugely, hugely. This board should feel no compulsion for restraint in the application of legal penalties to Sam Chang. Courtney Heinel, where is the strong legal instrument that will deliver that message to Sam Chang? To my knowledge, it has not been delivered. When will that be delivered? The souls which comprise the body of illegal non-citizens occupying Sam Chang's Super 8 commercial business property are being used by operatives as pawns in a dangerous political game of four-dimensional chess, playing the lives of these human souls in real and tangible substantial risk. Yet they came willingly. More to the point, my concern is for our local souls whose lives are at risk and whose livelihood this board owes a responsibility.
Your 4 minutes is up.
Thank you.
Carrie Andy Salvatore?
Also, I understand that it's a very hot topic, okay? But I really believe that we can be courteous and in the words that we use to other people. There are many times when people stand at that podium and express things that I don't necessarily agree with, but I would be careful in what words I use to discuss the matter with them, okay? So please, I'm asking for everyone to be courteous.
I'm very nervous. My name is Carrie Ann Salvatore. I live at 1208 Fort Hunter. I had a couple different things. You kind of stole some of my thunder in a way I guess some of you don't like to hear, so I'll try and say a few things gentler. First, the Carmen Fire Department I know is 100% volunteer, so there really isn't anything political about code violation discussions. And last meeting, which I watched after learning there were some things about the Super 8, that the original code violation was from July, when these illegal immigrants arrived basically in the middle of the night, has yet to be acted on by our town attorney, Ms. Heinel. So my question to you is, why are you working against your client, who is us, the citizens of Rotterdam, New York? And I just wanted to quote, a young Chicago woman was at her local town meeting, and by me listening to her, gave me the courage to come here. So I'm quoting, "I have a message to my fellow Americans. Whose side are you on? Are you on the side of criminals or are you on the side of this country? Stop feeling like you're a bad person for calling them illegals. Stop letting our enemies gaslight us into believing we are racist or anti-immigrant. You want to be a good person? A good person isn't a coward. A good person stands up for their neighbors, and they stand up for their country. And that's all I need to say right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Timothy Wallace?
I'm sorry.
Tim Walters, 107 Mercer, in Rotterdam. Going back to the Stewart zoning change, there's nothing more that I could add or subtract from what's been said today or in the past. There is two things that hasn't been brought up. One is that after my own research, heavy research,
Can't really hear him.
Go closer.
Like this.
through my research, I've discovered that there has been a lot of contaminations in that 1.86 acres that Stewart's wants to develop into Stewart's. The latest one is 2017 is when it was closed. I live right next door. My concerns for my family before myself and a lot of the residents that are around there is that I would like to see a little bit more updated version of phase 1, phase 2 testing on that soil on the 1.86 acres. That's number one. Number two is if this does get approved by the board, that it gets the literature in any contract should disclose that it should only be for that 1.86 acres and not have a side door or a back door to other establishments that are capable of coming in and creating more commercial standings. Across the street from where Stewart's wants to go, it is a residential community. I'm not opposed to moving forward. It is. I'm adding to if this panel decides to move forward with it. And it's just not a commercial corridor. It's a residential corridor. And I think it's pushing the envelope a little bit even to have Stewart's there. And that's all I really wanted to say. I appreciate you allowing me to come back up and say something.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I have just one, Molly.
Thank you to the town board and thank you, Diane, for reading my email. First off, during my recent visit to Price Chopper, I overheard a nearby conversation that caught my attention. The individuals were referring to the Super 8 motel as Little Mexico. I found this remark to be quite concerning and inappropriate, since most aren't even from Mexico. Second, Stewart's is awesome and they should be allowed to move anywhere they want. Thank you, Robert Gigliardi.
That's it. Okay, then we're closing privilege of the floor and we'll move on to our resolution. Our first resolution is...
Excuse me, the person, but every town you said, if you didn't sign up, please come and speak. Now you've changed that rule?
I did at the beginning of the meeting, so no, and I tried to extend that, but you have come to more than enough town board meetings to know that you have to sign up.
Yeah,
And
but
there's
no,
reason not to.
you just can't change
So,
the
no.
rules arbitrarily.
Yeah,
That's not
technically,
fair.
you
That's not fair. Then you're shutting down a resident.
I am enforcing the rule that it was already there, so.
This is from
Move
this time
on.
forward. Gavel all you want.
We will.
This
go on
time
to the
forward,
First resolution.
I don't have the right we don't have the right, so you're shutting down the person's First Amendment speech. First Amendment
I'm
right.
going on with our first resolution of the year 2024, number 164. The clerk will read.
To accept town board meeting minutes.
Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Second by Mrs. Galucci. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani? Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlag?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Next resolution is resolution 165 was tabled during the agenda meeting. So we'll move to Resolution 166. The clerk will read.
To accept revenue for the town clerk's office for March of 2024.
Okay, is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Mastriani. Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Second by Mrs. Galucci. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schwab?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Next resolution is Resolution 167 of the year 2024. The clerk will read.
To authorize change order number 2 and 3 with Empire Electric New York LLC for the Rotterdam Town Hall renovations.
Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I
I'll
have a
second.
second? Second by Mr. Schwab. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schwab?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 168 of the year 2024. The clerk will read.
To authorize change order number 3 with John W. Danforth Company for the Rotterdam Town Hall renovations.
Okay, is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Second by Mrs. Galucci. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schwab?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 169 of the year 2024. The clerk will read.
To authorize change order number 6 with Bunkoff General Contractors Incorporated for the Rotterdam Town Hall renovations.
Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Second by Mrs. Galucci. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schwab?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 170 of the year 2024. The clerk will read.
To recognize the introduction of introductory local law blank of 2024 to amend section 266-46 entitled Section 6, Stop Intersections of the Code of the Town of Rotterdam for the addition of stop signs along the Edgewood Avenue intersections of Kenmore Avenue, Marengo Street, and Delaware Avenue, and schedule a public hearing thereon.
Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion? I'll make the motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Schwab. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schwab?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 171 of the year 2024. The clerk will read.
To approve the change of business hours at Town Hall.
Okay, is there any discussion? Okay, do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mrs. Galucci. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Schwab. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schwab?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes,
5 yes.
resolution passes. Resolution 172 of the year 2024. The clerk will read.
To authorize the purchase of an iMop XL Plus machine for the Rotterdam, or for the Senior Citizen Center.
Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Schwab. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schwab?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Next resolution is Resolution 173 of the year 2024. The clerk will read.
To enact introductory local law number 5 of 2024 to establish a 6-month extension to local law 8 of 2023, which established a 6-month moratorium prohibiting battery energy storage system installations within the town of Rotterdam.
Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Mr. Schwab. Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Second by Mrs. Galucci. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schwab?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 174 of the year 2024. The clerk will read.
To enact introductory local law number 6 of 2024 to establish a 6-month extension to local law 9 of 2023, which established a 6-month moratorium prohibiting wind generation system installations within the town of Rotterdam.
Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mrs. Galucci. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Schwab. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schwab?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 175 of the year 2024, the clerk will read.
To approve budget transfers to the 2024 budget.
Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mrs. Galucci. Do I have a second? I'll second. On the question, clerk call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schwab?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 176 of the year 2024, the clerk will read.
To adopt the factual findings contained in the report of personnel matter 02282024.
Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Second by Mrs. Galucci. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schwab?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 177 of the year 2024, the clerk will read.
To declare computer equipment and accessories obsolete.
Okay, is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mrs. Galucci. Do I have a second? I'll second. On the question, clerk call the roll.
Mr. Dawson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schwab?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. During our agenda session, Mr. Dodson made a motion, and I seconded to add Resolution 178 onto the agenda. So will the clerk please read Resolution 178?
To appoint Keith Ruggiero to the position of purchasing coordinator.
Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Mastriani on the question. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dawson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schwab?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
The resolution passes, and that concludes our resolutions for this evening. So now we'll go on to liaison reports. Do any of the board members have anything they wish to say under liaison?
Yes, I'd like to just reiterate Ms. Paul's comments that the Parks Committee spearheading and organizing the annual Now Clean Sweep on Saturday, April 20th from 9 to noon. It's a great morning event. We get a lot of volunteers and we're able to really transform Kiwanis Park in a short period of time. So I encourage anyone nearby to come over to Kiwanis Park on Saturday morning, 20th, and we'll have some fun. Bring tarps. Those are a good tool that we use. Leaf blowers, rakes, gloves. Also like to say that met with contractor at Esposito Park to look at the tennis courts there. They're in pretty rough shape. The cracks go all the way down to the sub base, which means that it will be expensive to repair, and it would have to be repaired in whole in totality. So, you know, that's part of the calculus now that we're going to have to use to evaluate what happens at Esposito Park. That's it for the Parks Committee.
Joe, Mr. Mastriani, do you know, are we going to be able to get a highway dump truck there again, the Packard, so that we can put the brush from Portland right there? Perfect, that makes it so much easier.
Larry would be the one to ask to make sure we'll have a Packer truck at Kiwanis Park.
Yes,
on 20.
send one there for that.
Yeah, it's been a great tool. We get
Yeah.
to.
Great, looking forward to it. Anyone else under liaison reports? Okay, how about under miscellaneous? Do any of the board members wish to say anything under miscellaneous?
Just report the Energy Committee is still, you know, had a great meeting with the town designated engineer, Colliers, Dan Farnan, to, you know, look through the solar code that was drafted up, and he provided some great feedback. So hopefully we can get that code adopted soon. And the Energy Committee did discuss, you know, the need to purchase electricity and gas at the end of 2025, and to utilize a broker or municipal buying agent to do that, and we're hopefully going to explore that soon.
I would like to remind anyone who's watching this that lives in Water District 3 or 4 that the lead service inventory is being done. We have posted this flyer on our website. I believe we sent it out as an alert. Our water operator, Justin Peterson, has brought them to local areas in the junction. We really need your input on testing your water service lines inside your house. Okay, so if you could spread the word, we really appreciate that. Anyone else?
Andrew, when's the open house? What time?
1, 2, 3.
All right.
1 o'clock to 3 o'clock.
I don't know if you said the time or I just missed it.
I think you did originally.
Did you? Yeah, right. I probably zoned out for a second, I'm sorry. But I just want to thank,
I don't know if you could have a hat though.
my
I don't know what goes in your
head's
size.
too big. It wouldn't be a good look for me. Maybe I can get a real fire hat possibly, see what we can do, But hey, I want to thank Supervisor Collins for, the executive session. I think that it's much needed. I'm happy that, the firemen will be able to speak unencumbered with the board as well as the attorney, and I appreciate for doing that. Pardon me?
I don't think that's the case.
It's just the board.
Just the board?
Just
Yes.
for it.
Gotcha.
Anything else from any of the board members? Okay, then do I have a motion for this board to go into executive session pursuant to board members requesting executive session to discuss their proposed litigation concerning the Super 8 motel?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Mastriani, do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Second by Mrs. Galucci. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dawson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlab?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes to go into executive session.
Motion passes and we'll enter executive session at 8:20 p.m.